Series. This edition we have for you is a very interesting session, and I'm happy that you all could join us for it. The title, as you can see, is Franchise versus Homegrown IXPs. And one of the reasons why I really like this session is since I proposed it to the program committee almost 2 months ago, it's been one of those titles and discussion points that when you say the title or you talk a little bit about the panel, people like raise an eyebrow and look at you funny for a minute. And then there's an avalanche of thoughts and ideas that follow, and people end up sharing a lot of insights and information. And I felt that it was about time that for us here at the virtual peering series and in Africa in general, to start discussing more about these different models that we are seeing popping up all over the continent. So next slide, please. Basically, the session is, and you probably saw this on the website already, but to walk you through this, the session will aims to provide a balanced discussion about the different types that are there, without trying to be biased, without pushing for one model over the other. The idea is to just provide from the experts that are running exchanges by these different models and have established different exchanges by these different models, of sharing their experiences and what their thoughts are on how to get something like this done, allowing you, the audience, to draw your own conclusions and figure out if this model works for you in your local peering environment or doesn't. Next slide. So in the effort of being fair and to everyone, the way we're doing this panel is the following. We have these 3 questions that you see in front of you, that each panelist will be given 9 minutes to address these 3 points. Now, they may decide to spend some time more on one question versus the other, but what we would ideally like to hear from them are points that cover an overview of the IXP model, where and when does it work best, and the impact that it has on building and growing an active local peering community. For that, we have a panel of experts for you guys. I'm looking at the agenda here, so introducing myself as moderator. My name is Hisham Ibrahim. I work for RIPE-NCC, and I have my co-moderator with me, Fergus, from Flex Optics. And we have a lineup of panelists, as you can see, that represents different walks of industry. We have Luke from the Congo Republic Exchange Point. We got Marco from DICIX, we have Michelle from Terraco, Mohammed from the Nigerian Exchange Point, Remco from Asteroid, and we have Nishal from PCH. And each one, like I said, will be walking us through the different models, having Nishal at the end provide some commentary from the PCH perspective. At this point, I'm proposing also a new experiment here. I'm all about impact these days and measuring and gauging impact. So what we're trying to do is gauge and see if the session actually has managed to sway people or sway different opinions. So what I would like to ask the Secretariat is to run the poll now, if possible. Basically, the poll is asking you, before we start the session, which model do you think is the best approach to launch and run an exchange point in your local community? And the idea is you provide an answer now, we will hold the answers, and towards the end of the session, we will run this poll again. And we will see if there are differences in opinions based on the session. Have we actually managed to change any ideas or not? While people are filling this up, next slide, please. Yes, so housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and it's being streamed on some of the social media platforms like Facebook, Twitch, and Periscope. We do expect everybody to engage respectfully and responsibly. When there are questions, please speak up, keep them short and straight to the point. Sorry, the slides got a bit fuzzy here. Kindly form your question is identify yourself and the country, preferably, because that way we can help gear the conversation a little bit more towards your local community. And yes, there's the code of conduct. Please check that and make sure that you abide by that. Next slide. There's the chats room available for people that are interested in chat, and there's the question room that you can ask questions on. And please keep those separate. You can ask questions in both English and French. We have somebody helping us, Guylaine, that will be helping us. Thank you, Guylaine, for that, to do translation. Plus, we have the instant interpretation. So while I'm speaking English, our Francophone colleagues and brothers and sisters can hear us. And when they speak in French, we can also understand them when we speak in English. Next slide. When they speak in French, sorry. Social media, a bunch of hashtags. You social media maniacs, you know what to do with them. We have like I said, the interpretation, and you have the, yes, and there's the caption option of having English in the bottom of the captions of what you're saying. Next slide, please. So thank you notes for the sponsors that are making all this happen. You can see their logos on the background here, and you can see their logos here. So for the event sponsors, there's M6, DICX, Facebook, and PAX. Next slide. For the series sponsor, we have NAP Africa that has been sponsoring the whole series so far of the virtual peering series. Thank you, NAP Africa. And last but not least, we have Flex Optics for the simultaneous interpretation. So without further ado, let us start. I think this bought us a little bit of time until everybody joined. We have around 130 people tuning in, so that's a good number to start with. And I would first, in the sake of also being neutral and unbiased in the order, so I chatted with the panelists and we decided that we will do this alphabetically. So the first speaker will be Luke, representing the Republic of Congo Exchange Point. Luke, you have 9 minutes to talk to us about how your exchange point operates. Go ahead. Luke. I'm not sure if there is a lag in the, or it's just Luke not hearing us. Luke, can you hear me?
Je vous entends très bien. Est-ce que vous...
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to take part in this panel and talk about the various options, solutions, approaches. I am advisor in post telecommunications and digital systems with the First Minister of the Republic of Congo. And I'm also the co-founder of the CGX, the Congo IXP, which was put in place in 2013 with the support of the World Bank and co-funded by the CIMAC countries.
Today, an IXP that we developed together. In the RDC, and there are 5 altogether, and had been a significant role in the community because it allowed to the community to enjoy things they hadn't had before, and some IP routes that did not exist before. And today, thanks to our cooperation with our partners, we have been able to work with other actors in the field, and we have been able to create a general assembly, an association of all actors, which allows these actors to encourage operators and in the internet system we have here. And after all the support we've had from the association, the actors have it's a group of actors who operate these IXPs, and thanks today to the regulators, we have created a data center and a regulator that's made a federation of these organizations. And therefore, the technical platform has allowed us to use servers, looking glasses. We're very happy today with our exponential growth, and it's not actually everyone who's taken on these new habits in the country, but we are changing the way that things are done in the country. Success is due to the ecosystem that's integrated. Sound problems, I'm sorry, interpreter. We agree on our style of management, and we value these IXPs because they allow traffic to. We have financial support for these IXP, and these resources have helped certain operators, and therefore, this working relationship between the operators has been essential. And what we've been looking at is how the two IXPs can function with a point of presence. And so that's what I have to say to you today. And my conclusion is, if we don't have the expertise, you have to define your own model adapted to the context of your own country and the type of competition that we have. It's adapted model to that. And for all those, so that it's useful for everyone in the region. And I hope this can help other countries who can work in this way. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you for that, Luke. You still have a couple minutes. I'll throw you another question. Do you think the model that you had there was the only way that would have worked in Brazzaville, or would there have been another way with retrospect in mind?
From our environment at the moment, we think it's the best model. The other model is with partnerships. and we did do this with a supplier, but the financial impact, it's not that it was a bad model, but the financial impact, but we believed that partnerships were necessary, and it's difficult to assess the costs. And it's a small country, Congo, so and we couldn't envisage this project without cooperation, and so it's not a significant amount of traffic. And to gather all the operators together, that's something already that we feel very happy about. But there are additional services, of course, and large companies, and I think that could be a different model, and perhaps we can consider how we could develop the model from that perspective.
Thank you very much for that, Luke, and thank you for your perspective there. It's been very useful, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the questions that will be asked there. Moving to our next panelist, Marco. Usually, exchange points drive their names from the country or from the market that they developed in and work in. You guys have a different take and model there, and there's this thing called powered by. If you can elaborate a little bit on what those actually mean, I'd be very grateful to you.
Yeah, hello. First of all, thank you for inviting me to that panel today. So I'm very happy to have the chance to talk a little bit about the model or the models which we are basically offering. So traditionally, DKIX was born in Germany. So it's based in Frankfurt, and therefore in Frankfurt, we're a homegrown internet exchange, as you would name it. It's 25 years back. And nowadays we run internet exchanges in meanwhile 27 cities. So we have 27 internet exchanges which we run on different models, basically. When I look at the questionnaire, well, you could say some of them are like this franchise model where you said a powered by. We have some exchange points where we have a contract where we are total in the background. And having said that, there is no ideal model, let's say. I don't see any model where I say this is the one which you should use, because you will find the advantages, disadvantages in all of them. And having said that, yeah, it really depends on where you are. I give you one example. UAE, where I'm responsible for, you basically have a community of two ISPs or two operators. We run the internet exchange on behalf of one of the operators. It's called UI Exchange, powered by DKIX, and basically it works very well. On the other hand, we have India, where we have a joint venture with a homegrown internet exchange. It's not powered by DKIX. It is DKIX more or less nowadays inside, but we have a local company with the local team which founded the internet exchange. It's a co-ownership with the founders of it. So, and also this works very well. So in the end of the day, if you ask me what is the underlying success factor for an internet exchange, it's basically passion. It's passion for what you do, and passion for the region, passion for the area where you operate it, and passion to build a community there, because it's a total different story if you want to build a community in Middle East where you have two operators which are not even talking to each other and you have to target the whole region, or if you build a community like in India where you have 200 ISPs in the area of Mumbai alone. So, and I think this is the outtake or the takeout of 25 years of experience. An internet exchange is not just a switch. It's not just about governance. It's not just about setting the right policies. It's about the community and how to build the community. And you can only build the community if you create the idea of the region and how to do it there. So, and as you can think of, we see this very different where in the US, where we operate in 4 markets. or in India, where we operate also in 4 markets and have our joint venture there. So if you think about what is the, let's say, the advantage, if you want, of having a big internet exchange in the background, well, it's basically some of the services you can use everywhere. As much as you need to localize in community building, as much you can also have some things which are valid everywhere. I'll give you one example, DKIX Academy, for instance. Long time ago, when we started in the Middle East, we had the issue that a lot of the networks were not used to the peering. So we understood we need a lot of explaining. So we invented the peering management, which means we help the people really to peer. It came also to the point that we help people to clean up their IP databases, so to be not filtered out on route servers, to advocate for all this cleanness in PGP, let's say. And we learned that we need also to educate more. And so we founded the DKIX Academy, which is not only for our participants, but basically for everyone. So the most, I would say 90% of the content is free of charge. Sometimes we do paid very specific academy stuff as well, but most of it is free. And we offer it also to other exchanges. That's something which is also doable, of course, if you have a homegrown IXP, but you know, if it is a lot of work, and if you run 27 exchanges worldwide, you get all these requests, it's easier to provide that in the end of the day, because we have dedicated people to do so. That's their job. Same as the brand building. If you think about all these hassles you have to get in touch with the big OTTs, I mean, we all know Internet Exchange is basically a point to bring together the operators and the OTTs. It's pretty hard for a lot of Internet exchanges to get in touch with them. Well, because we operate worldwide, we run into the big OTTs, I don't know. If there are conferences, then we run into them maybe every week somewhere on the planet with some of our colleagues. So it's, and everybody is always informed about every Internet exchange, and you can always discuss and say, well, have you seen, we just opened in, what was last week, Chicago, for instance, and you can tell them, okay, are you interested? Where are you? You look up at PeeringDB and you see, okay, whoever, Facebook is there, you talk to them and you can discuss that. That's, of course, some advantage where, for instance, especially we saw this in India, my colleagues in India did benefit a lot. I mean, there's a huge interest of the OTTs to come to India, of course, but it's really different if you have the chance to discuss that everywhere. So I just see a question popping up. What are the specific technical requirements for an IX operator under the powered by model? Well, let's say some people say we're a bit complicated when it comes to that. We will ask a lot of questions. We are not jumping on every opportunity, and because, as I said, an Internet exchange is not just putting a switch somewhere. It's much, much more. It's building the community, building an ecosystem around it in the best case. And in the best case, it's an ecosystem where the OTT will come and will not ask you to pay for their caching servers, but really want to come and join the exchange and bring also not only the traffic benefit to the exchange, but really business to the exchange and to the community, to the data center and everything. So the requirements, it is a long questionnaire which we usually ask, where we are going through, which includes from licensing to regulations to connectivity, to get a feeling what is even possible to serve from that exchange point, data center situation, how are the data centers doing with playing with each other, how to interconnect the data centers, what is the pricing, how we can build a business case that really works on the long run, because this is what we want to do. We want to do the next another 25 years, and then I don't know, maybe then with 50, 100 exchanges, I don't know this today, but that's basically the goal. So I hope I could give you a brief summary and overview of what we do and how it works, and handing back to Hisham.
Yeah, thank you, Marco, for that. And you raised a couple of interesting points about passion and community building. And yeah, we'll get back to you with some of the questions. I already see some questions popping up for you. Moving to my third panelist, Michelle. You represent NAP Africa here, and it's one of the largest IXPs that we have on the continent. Can you talk us a little bit about the model and the 3 questions that I answered? Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. So thanks very much for inviting us to this panel. So today representing NAP Africa, one of the internet exchanges, as Hassan mentioned. In terms of NAP Africa, we kind of, I would say, a mix of both, funny enough, if you look at our history. So we now are coming up to 10 years old. We've got 3 regions, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban, located in South Africa, of which combination of the traffic going through there is reaching 1.5 terabits at the moment, of which we've got over 470 unique ASNs appearing at the exchange, and that's servicing about 16 different African countries. At the moment, our model is incredibly different, where we give it away for free. So we don't charge ports, membership, no once-offs, not even the cross-connect. And this could be done because we are fully funded by the co-location business, which is Telecommunications. And the driver behind that is we see that there's quite a symbiotic, as Marco mentioned, symbiotic relationship between the co-location provider and the IXP, be it the IXP bringing new members to the co-location, or the co-location essentially bringing new members to the IXP. To talk about community, I suppose last year was probably one of the biggest examples of community. I mean, you spend a huge amount of time building these exchanges, getting the community together, getting people to embrace peering across all segments, not only OTTs and ISPs carriers, but also a large percentage of enterprise markets. And with the pandemic, we could actually see that everything that the community has worked hard at, and it's not just the IXP, it's around that actual community and the passion of that community to keep things going, we could actually see that it actually delivered. To give you an idea on traffic, in February last year, we were sitting at about 900 gig of traffic, to today where we're sitting at about 1.5 terabits per second of peering traffic. On the actual IXP itself, and I'm going to go into kind of my thinking around homegrown versus franchise model now, is this massive amount of growth and kind of where is it coming from? So it's coming from new ISPs joining the community. So we're seeing, particularly in South Africa, large amounts of wireless providers helping to support the rural areas are starting to join the community. And by joining the community, it's kind of, they speak to existing members, try and understand peering, where to peer, how to peer, etc., and then reach out to us, typically on that. Enterprise networks as well. And we're seeing a number of networks joining outside of South Africa with that, and supported by continued investments with content and cloud in Africa. So pushing again on that community side, there's a lot of activities, as Marco said, in order to keep these exchanges growing and successful and sustainable. So a number of things that we do is, once again, free. Telecom Tech Days, where we try and invite key members of the community to educate us on various aspects that's happening worldwide. We've got a really fun thing, and hopefully when we're all allowed out of our houses, I welcome all of you to join, but it's Beers for Peers. And that was, funny enough, invented, Telecom has a little bar, as we would. And in there, we had 2 peering members who were actually just trying to solve BGP issues. And they only left at like 1 in the morning. So we realized that, hang on, out of 2 members, how is this possibly, happening for everybody else? So we launched these events, which are basically social gatherings for networks to meet each other and solve various peering issues. And then event sponsorship, pretty much like you see these kinds of events, we continuously try and do that in order to promote education. So I suppose it goes down to homegrown versus franchise, the pros, the cons. So I had a little bit of thoughts about this, and it was quite strange for NAP Africa's history, because we've also been a bit of a mix between your homegrown and your franchise type model. But I suppose when you look at the franchise type model, and if there was a DKIX or an Asteroid type model in those days, what would have benefited NAP Africa, especially when starting out? So I think technical aspects. So it's not as easy as just putting down a switch. I've heard a couple of our fellow countries kind of say, I've bought this really cool Juniper switch or Marista switch, and I'm going to put it down and I'm going to get peering going. And from a technical side, there's a lot more aspects, and even more than it was kind of 10 years ago when we started. Building that local community is huge for a new entrant coming in. There's a lot of trust that needs to be gained within that community. Building a global community, as Marco mentioned, when you're starting a new IX, who do I get to speak to at these various OTTs? Me sitting here, let's say in Africa, and to try and find, let's say, someone from a Microsoft or Amazon or Facebook or any of these guys, it can be challenging if you don't know who to speak to. And then ROI, so return on investment, because that's always, kind of a big thing is, hey, you're putting down this infrastructure, what is that ROI going to be? And I'm sure Remco is going to take you through a little bit on the Asteroid model, but it definitely is, don't just start with a Rolls Royce. We started off small and grew over time, and thanks to huge amounts of advice that we got from the rest of the community. Kind of the homegrown stuff and the pros. So once again, I want to go down to that community drives that actual sustainability of the IXP. You gain the trust over years and years of building that relationship. As a local homegrown, I suppose you understand who to speak to and where you can best service them within the local market. Building strong relationships. So I suppose one of the things that with the homegrown flavor that kind of comes across is you as an IXP, you need to reach out to other IXP members or member associations like a EuroIX and kind of say, I'm starting this thing, how on earth do I do it? And I'll never forget the days with Remco spending hours with Andrew and myself trying to help us through these processes. Bajal working hard alongside us to try and get us to see, the big picture and what this actually does. Andy Davidson even flying to South Africa to kind of share his knowledge and experience around running these IXPs. And I mean, that's kind of where I sort of question the franchise versus homegrown model, is that in a franchise model, do you in effect, and this is maybe a question to my colleagues, do you in effect leapfrog that ability to build those strong relationships? So is it a pro or is it a con? Or does it take you to a spot where you don't have to stress about the small things and actually just focus on the relationship building? So that's kind of the question I'm throwing out there today. The other side, which is pretty key, is that product flexibility. So nowadays with IXs, it's not just about peering. There's things like cloud connections that are starting to happen. There's various product offerings that the OTTs are bringing to market, which leverage internet exchanges and being able to keep up with those funny enough, quick product offerings that are coming to market. And then the other key is around technical thought leadership. So if you look at someone like an Andrew and even a Mark on our team, how they've grown over the last 10 years and have helped customers not only just around peering, but understanding their networks and where to take their networks further. So those were just kind of some thoughts that I jotted down. So in summary, IXPs, they're incredibly important to any economy, be they homegrown or franchise. We've seen that happen, especially over the last year. They drive large investments happening within a company. They create in a country. They create a sustainable ecosystem, and they're key driver to delivering internet access to all end users out there.
Thanks for
So,
that. Yeah,
closing, doesn't really matter which model you choose. Make sure the community make sure it includes the community and development of the community.
Yeah, these are really good points. You kind of went over the 9 minutes, but I didn't want to interrupt you because you are putting good thoughts for the Q&A session. So thank you for that. I really do appreciate them. And moving down the panelist list, we have Mohammed. Mohammed, I remember almost like a decade ago, discussions with Michuki and with Nishal and with others in Africa talking about Nigeria and the potential that it had for building an exchange. Now you are here telling us about the model. So please let us know what happened and your thoughts and reflections on how that went.
Thank you very much, Hisham. And thank you to ISOC for organizing this webinar. The topic is quite apt for this particular time, considering that there are so many discussions. Well, let me commence with the questions you have raised earlier. First of it is to provide an overview of the IXP model that IXPN is running. We are a not-for-profit, neutral, and membership-based organization. And we have 4 locations in Lagos within one city. And then we have 4 different other
Mohammed, we seem to have...
Hello?
Yes, you're back. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Okay, it seems my internet connection. So the seed funding was provided by the Nigerian Communications Commission, the regulator, and they continue to support us. In terms of, where and when does this model works best, a kind of a not-for-profit
So, Mohammed, while you tend to your internet issues for the sake of time and allowing you to have your full 9 minutes, maybe I can move down the list to Remco and then allow you to have your full 9 minutes after he's done. So, Remco, you want to tell us a little bit more about the Asteroid models, Remco? And Mohammed will get back to you after Remco. We give you the full 9 minutes after that.
Hello.
I'm more than happy to hand back over to Mohammed if he's back online.
Go ahead, Remco, and we circle back to Mohammed.
Okay, that put me on the spot a little bit. Let's see, let's quickly pull out. I was waiting for Mohammed to finish. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Remco van Mook. First of all, I would like to thank ISOC and Hisham and Fergus for setting up this session. I mean, getting together has always been a key part of maintaining and growing this community, and these events are critical in doing so, even if we're just online right now. I do hope to see all of you again in the flesh soon. Let's hope this year, maybe next year. About Asteroid. I set up a company called Asteroid 5 years ago, together with Andy Davidson and Nirani Nipuno. And Asteroid's mission, as we defined it, was to provide local interconnection wherever there is a need in a modern and cost-effective way. Right-sizing exchanges. Some of you may remember that 6 years ago at AFPIF, I presented about how to build an internet exchange. And even though the numbers in that presentation are now outdated, most of the principles actually still hold. So if you're looking at a primer for building exchanges, I could highly recommend it. For now, I think the key takeaway is that switch and servers are really the last thing you should worry about in setting up an exchange. Also, because Hisham wanted to have some fireworks, I'm going to throw in a statement. There are no free exchanges, just exchanges with an intransparent cost structure. So about Asteroid. So before I get into what Asteroid does, is I think when you start doing an internet exchange, what you first need to decide is which problem are you addressing. If you just want to get a bunch of local ISPs to interconnect in a remote area, that's fantastic. I mean, find some way to mutually agree on how you're going to do that. Find a way to distribute the cost. Get a switch, call it a day, end of, job done. Fantastic. If your scope is beyond that and you're looking at growing an international ecosystem, you'll find that the sort of more habitual participants of IXs, international players, have quite substantial expectations on what they expect to see with an exchange. And there's all sorts of different models. So the franchise versus homegrown, these are models that when we started Asteroid 5 years ago, we had both of them in mind, actually. So if you look at how we are operating right now, actually half of our exchanges are homegrown and the other half are franchise-ish. So what do we do? And really how we do it is we'll let the business model and the local conditions decide which model fits best. So on one end of the spectrum, what we call a white label IX, which is basically IX in a box, which we ship as a product that we then fully support on the technical end. So if you're buying that from us, you get like full control of what product you're offering at which price. You can completely integrate that into your own portals and customer engagement, and you add up with like a fully fledged modern IX. On the other side, there's the franchise model, which in Africa we so far been operating in Kenya. And that has the benefit of having like a coherent global pricing policy. It's part of a bigger system. So if people already connect to one exchange, there's no need to go through complicated contracts and paperwork. You just make it easier for everyone to connect, and it's on a neutral basis. But I mean, reality being reality, truth is always in the middle somewhere. So in some cases, we'll work with local partners and completely disappear. So there's examples, for example, on the border between the US and Mexico, where we support an exchange that doesn't have our name or logo attached to it anywhere, but still is one of the biggest interconnection points for Mexican internet traffic. On the other hand, there's partnerships that we're currently working on where for regulatory purposes, we're going to depend on the local partner, but they want to use our name for the exchange. That's fine. So really, it's everywhere. It's everything in between. And is there which model is better? The answer to that question is really completely depends on what you're trying to do. I think that what you need to look at, metrics that matter for building exchanges and sort of evaluating exchanges, is unique peers at an IX? How many networks do you have that nobody else has? No other IX, no other interconnection point is able to touch. Are you providing a value to the connected networks? If you're charging a fee, are they actually getting their money's worth? How do you grow connections? And that's not just traffic related. That is very much value related, because we've seen plenty of examples where even a megabit of traffic can represent a huge financial impact. Diversity, you don't want a network, you don't want an IX that just has a bunch of local ISPs on it. You also don't want an IX that just has a bunch of content distribution networks on it. Actually, the content distribution networks in that case probably won't join your exchange. And finally, traffic statistics. But traffic statistics shouldn't be used to compare exchanges with each other, because that is completely out of context. What's a lot more important is how it relates to the environment that that exchange is operating in. So how much does it represent, what percentage does it represent of the internet traffic in that geography? That's a lot more important. So we have, for example, our exchange in Mombasa, which is, well, we're going to call homegrown for the sake of this conversation. That was an ecosystem where another exchange had tried their luck a couple of years before. That didn't work out, maybe a little bit too early. What made us decide to jump in was that there was an ecosystem that was actually developing, because you can't really do an IX without supporting infrastructure. You need to have neutral data center territory, for example, to be able to do such a thing. You need to have a budding ecosystem of local networks and international networks that are interested in coming to that location. And of course there's and especially in the African setting, the regulatory framework is a big one. You need to have the regulator on your side when you do these things, and thankfully the regulatory environment in Kenya is very open. And if there are any regulators listening, I would very much encourage you all to have a conversation with your Kenyan colleagues. So we launched the exchange finally in February of last year. From a Corona perspective, the timing couldn't have been worse. We've yet to do an actual launch event. But a year on, we've actually filled the first switch. We have a good number of unique networks that are on no other exchange on the planet. The local networks are actually getting 50% of all of their traffic through the IX, which is a remarkable result. And we're hitting 4 gigs of traffic on a daily basis now. Again, 4 gigs of traffic compared to Frankfurt looks like nothing. But for Kenya, 4 gigs is a lot. The exchange in Mexico, or actually on the border between Texas and Mexico, a bit of a weird one maybe. That was, from the experts' opinion 4 years ago, the absolute middle of nowhere. There was nothing for miles around, and it certainly was the most uninteresting part of the world to do any interconnection in. But the data center there saw something, and they saw something that they tried to sell. And what you're now looking at is there's now 11 networks connected to that exchange, and there's 114 gigs of traffic on that exchange, out of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere.
That's a very good point that you mentioned, because when a lot of people look at exchanges, they compare them by traffic volume. But as you said, it's very relevant to where the exchange point is and what community is actually serving and what purpose is actually serving there.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that point in the Q&A. I'd like to throw this to Muhammad. Hopefully he has a more stable connection now.
I'm 1 minute out. Can I?
Okay. Yeah. Well.
I mean, just throwing from some final rocks in there, so we have a good conversation later on. Going back to the problem you're addressing, I think you need to be, I mean, before you build an exchange or as you're building an exchange, you need to decide whether, am I developing a local ecosystem or am I operating a storefront for a remote ecosystem? That's a very important distinction. Stuff like selling remote peering, even though it sounds attractive because you get like foot traffic coming to your store, is actually fundamentally at odds with developing a local ecosystem, because the value that you create on the exchange is the unique networks that you have. And if you then basically just hand over that unique selling point to a remote peering point, there's no point for international networks to come to your location, which is what your end goal should be. And I think with that, I'd like to hand it over to back to Hisham, and then let's see if Mohammed's network connection is now better.
Yeah, thanks for that, Remco. And yeah, I don't know why our clocks didn't sync up, but I'm happy you made that final point. Thanks. Mohammed, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Hisham, and my sincere apologies to the attendees for the quality of my network. Is it still having an issue? Am I still bad? Hello?
Hi, yeah, maybe if you switch off your video, Mohammed.
Can you hear me? Okay. Is it clear now, Hisham?
I can hear you, Mohammed. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, it's my network is quite unstable. Okay, my apologies once again. So as I was trying to explain, is that considering that most of the audience, the people that are here, actually African, are trying to even set up exchange points, and we're discussing the different models here. It would be nice to elaborate and explain the different models. As I was saying, the Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria actually was initiated by the regulator that provided the seed funding. So it's a community-based organization that is not for profit. And if you look at it globally, excluding North America, almost all the other continents in the world are running such a model whereby which community came together and they built an exchange point. So if you look at the largest exchange points right now in the world, most of them are the same thing, except some few of them. Even the largest ones that have metamorphosed to have a franchise model, most of them started, from the foundation with a small IXP as an association. So I would encourage my African brothers, if they want to set up an exchange point, it's better to start small from the community base, because the most important thing in setting up an exchange is not the device, as some of the speakers have mentioned here. It's not the technical infrastructure, but rather building the trust, building the community, because some of the communities are not matured for even the franchise to come and develop those locations. Most of the franchise that we have right now and some of the commercial exchange points in the world usually do not deploy in virgin lands. They usually target those areas where at least the community has taken time to develop those regions and those areas, and therefore they have an opportunity now to set up such an exchange point. So if you look at it in Europe, for example, 60 to 65% of the exchanges are homegrown based IXPs and are not for profit. If you look at Africa, the same thing. If you look at Asia, maybe possibly 50-50. In some of the non-developed countries like in India and the rest, they have the community-based a non-for-profit exchange points, though that is a bit changing. If you look at some of the developed countries like Japan and the rest in Asia, they have the commercial exchanges and they have the franchise. So in terms of the value and impact that the local community-based bottom-up exchange does, is similar on how the entire internet evolved with all the benefits we see. If you notice that the internet, began with pairing of universities, and eventually we had the network access points and the exchange points grew. Right now, the internet is managed by Internet Corporation for Assigned Numbers, and that organization is a not-for-profit organization, community-based, bottom-up. Even though initially it was based on the reporting to NTIA of America, right now that model has changed. The Internet Governance Forum has come. So the global internet is supposed to be run by the community, because if you have vested interest, if you have commercial exchanges, it makes it a bit difficult for control of the internet. So it's better built by the community. So in Nigeria, for example, because it's community-based, it gives more voice to the ISPs. And wherever you have such an exchange point that is bottom-up, it gives voice to the community, and it gives more engagement with the government agencies, because government agencies usually listen to the community-based IXPs. So I will encourage the African countries that don't have an exchange point and that are trying to establish one to go towards such a model. For example, in Nigeria, we have tried as much as possible to nurture and to encourage small service providers. And over the years, we have moved to different sites across Nigeria where in some of the locations there was no single ASN, but yet we went ahead and built an exchange point. And over the years, for example, like in Kano now, we have 3 customers with 3 different ASNs that are exchanging traffic. We started with 45 Mbps capacity. Now it has much higher. So the community base can understand the need and why they need to build in even such a virgin land, and they go there and they deploy. We have never, for example, at IXP, and disconnected a member because they have not paid. We always encourage, we negotiate, we bend over backward for our members to ensure that they pay their dues, whatever we can do to accommodate them. Community-based IXPs have the opportunity to learn from the scratch and understand the fundamentals, the internal workings of an IXP. So as it is in IXP, and we have grown over the years from a single person, that is me, to many other staff. As we speak right now, I have 7 technical staff that have learned so much over the years that large number of them have moved out of the country. In fact, six of them are right now in Canada. So when you look at it, we are really strengthening the local community by capacity. We collaborate with the CCTLD, for example, the Nigerian.ng, because we are community-based. In fact, the IXP as an organization, we are running the technical infrastructure of the .ng CCTLD for over a period of time for free to encourage that. Right now, the CCTLD has grown substantially. It has grown so large, and they have over like 15 permanent staff right now running that. We couldn't have done that if we are not a community-based organization. And because we are community-based, we got a lot of support and funding from different organizations, from ISOC, from PCH, from African Union, even from the Nigerian government. So that's why it's important to start small as a community, though it's difficult, to learn the ropes, but it's better to commence in that way. And also because we are community-based, we tend to host some of the critical internet infrastructure services like the root servers, all for free. Initially we had an agreement with ISC Internet System Consortium to deploy the e-root servers. 3 of the servers, we powered it, we provided the internet connection for free. We also, some time back, we hosted the MLab, for free to ensure that, there is a measurement of the internet statistics. We contribute to and work with government towards creating, the right policies for government. For example, we participated in the last review of the national policy on cybersecurity and strategy. We provide a lot of free trainings. And because we are a not-for-profit IXP, we also collaborate with other IXPs. For example, we work with DKIX. We have signed an MOU. They are trying to provide free capacity building. There was a time, we were in the UK. We had a free training for 3 good days. They gave us so much time and energy to assist the exchange point in Nigeria. So that's the whole idea of building a community-based organization that is not for profit, homegrown, so that you get support from the the rest of the world. And because, we need to build the world together, one peer at a time. I think I'm almost out of time. I don't know whether I've answered some of the questions that you raised initially. Hello? Hisham, can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, I can hear you. And looks like Hisham is a little bit frozen right now.
Okay.
Fergus?
Okay. Michuki?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Fergus was meant to.
Oui, sorry.
Fergus was to carry on the conversation.
Yes.
So maybe if Fergus is not there, we could go on to the next person on the discussion list.
Hi, Mishuki, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mohammed. Next up is Nishal.
Thanks, Fergus. Hi, Michuki, and everybody else on the call. I'm happy to be here. Sorry, I missed the earlier ones. Most of you know me as an internet exchange point operator. We've been running an exchange in South Africa for 25 years. But when he reached out to me, Hisham said, don't talk from your IX perspective, which is going to be quite difficult for me to do. Let me be quite honest with you. And he said, speak really from the perspective of what it's like from connecting to internet exchanges across the world and from helping to develop internet exchanges across the world. So in advance, I'll apologize if I muddy the waters a little. I don't think I'm going to say anything that literally hasn't been said either by any of the other participants or some of the really good comments that are in the chats. And I don't know if you guys are following the chat room on the side, but some of the comments, for example, something that Nurani said that stood out, really stood out to me. It's not really about what model you choose for the exchange. It's really about how you use the resources you have and how you use the tools to build and grow something. When Hisham was talking to me about how he was going to start this conversation, he said, Nish, I'm going to ask you, is an exchange only about the switch? Because this is a theme that we've been hearing about. And I'm going to say yes to start with, because I think that that's the first thing that we often get very incorrect in our region. And I want to limit what I'm talking to specifically to starting up internet exchange points, because as for example, Nurani has very well said, once your exchange is developed, then pretty much the folks that are running the internet exchanges, you have a fairly good handle on what you need to do. And if you don't, well, then you haven't been listening to the participants. It comes down to effectively just two words, and that's community engagement. Find out what it takes to get your community engaged and then engage them. And your community will invariably grow. But I'd rather want to see this from a different perspective, and that's the perspective of exchanges that are just starting up. Because really, for me, it's exchanges that are starting up that are going through this, well, do I have to go through the issue of starting to build my own internet exchange point? Or do I need to think about partnering with another large international exchange or something like that? And for that, I have very strong opinions. So just like Remco did, I'm going to say I'm going to provide you with some strong thoughts. Our model at PCH is always that when you start to build an internet exchange point, the element that you need to focus on the most is the development of your domestic community. And while that sounds like, oh, you need to invest just in having infrastructure on site, you need to invest in building your team that can do it. Mohammed made a really good case of how today he's got 7 senior network engineers that are capable of debugging and working BGP. And that wouldn't have been possible if they were not trained and building and community run exchange. That's the kind of model that we think you should be looking for. And again, I want to be very specific about this. I'm speaking to those of you that don't have exchanges in your communities, or you're thinking about developing exchange points, or you're wondering what's the break point for when I need to move away from my homegrown exchange. And I hate that term, homegrown exchange, but I'm going to use it because it's been said here. But what point do I think about moving away from this and moving to a partnered buy or anything like that? If you're not investing into your community, when I talk about exchanges these days, I like to talk about the net export of capital that we as African folk are making to the developed part of the world by importing pre-solutions, pre-made solutions from elsewhere. When I talk about exchanges, I talk about what it takes for our domestic operators to start to understand the economic value that the exchange brings to us. It's not about BGP. The BGP parts are important. Brian, I know you're listening, and you posed a good question about where are we in terms of technology in Africa, and what do we have to do to fill the technology gaps. But the technology gaps are really easy to fill. They really are. People like Michuki have been doing training on this continent for more years than I have fingers on both hands. And it's actually paying off because now the training is moved into the next level of, well, this is what needs to happen. So what we really need to be looking at is saying, how do we invest in our local communities? I'm sorry, I'm kind of muddying the water again and bringing in how we did this 25 years ago. But it came down to what is going to be the long-term investment. Today, when people look at South Africa, they look at a well-connected ecosystem. They look at many carrier-neutral data centers. There's quite a few in South Africa now. They look at well-run internet exchange points. There's 2 separate individual exchange point hosts, and all of this is fantastic. But this wasn't the situation 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And I can tell you that because I was on the ground 25 years ago trying to look and build this stuff. The exchanges that are developing now that want all of the shinies, let's call them the shinies, you need to think about what does it take for me to put stuff in the ground now? And literally that is a switch. That is a simple switch. To echo what Remco said, when you're starting, it doesn't cost a lot. His presentation was a really good one. It's one of my favorite presentations from all of the AFFs. It's titled How to Build an Exchange for Less Than $1,000. You can go look it up. It was the AFF in Maputo. But when you're starting an internet exchange point, that's what you need. You need the community support, of course. And there are many examples of internet exchanges that have come up and that have run for a year or two or run for a short period of time and then have failed because there hasn't been the community buy-in, there hasn't been the passion that you've heard about, but not passion from one person, passion from that person being able to transfer this into a community, either by explaining this is the economic value that it's going to bring, or this is how we, something in my throat. The passion from the economic value that this is going to bring, or the passion from seeing into the future, into a 25-year future and saying, that's the environment I want. What is it going to take to build now? Unfortunately, for those startup exchanges, a lot of you are still getting caught up in things like costs. There's a question here about what does it cost to build an exchange? What's the regulatory model for building an exchange? And my answer to you is 0 on all of this. You can build an exchange really easily, really cheaply. There are organizations like the Internet Society and PCH that will happily give you infrastructure to start building your internet exchange at no costs. There's a well-defined model for regulation for internet exchange points, and that is you only really need to regulate if something is going wrong. And if you don't have an exchange, that's the thing that's going wrong, that you don't have an internet exchange point. So again, when you're thinking about building an exchange, remove these obstacles. Put in the elements that you need to say, what am I going to get for that looking down the road 25-year future? Because that's what you want to be focused on. That's the thing that you want to build. The business case for the exchange and thinking about how do I start bringing in foreign capital, you know what, all of that's going to come. Because if you can get 3 networks connected, as Mohammed was saying, then 5 networks will invariably connect because they can see value. And the international operators, the ones that you're looking for, they're going to come to your infrastructure, they're going to come to your location, to your internet exchange point. Once they can see that you actually are running a valid internet exchange, that there are networks that are being connected, and that you have some kind of model in place that can grow and that is sustainable. Hisham, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back here. Thanks, Nishal, for that. And I apologize for dropping out. So yeah, maybe taking some questions and maybe opening it up for the floor to address some of these points. I want to go back to one of the points that Remco brought up. And this is for all the panelists, so please, this is a free-for-all at this point. Remco said there's no such thing as free peering, and I'd like to hear some opinions on that. Any takers?
Well, I mean, to clarify, I said there's no such thing as a free exchange. You can have free peering, but I mean, yes, indeed. Let's hear someone else about this.
Okay. Hi, Hisham.
Hi, Mohammed. Go ahead.
He is absolutely right. He's correct. There is none for free, but usually the community-based, because they get support from within the community. They are volunteers. For example, Michiki has been giving his time for free to the Kenyan Exchange. And I can assure you that during the initial stages, he was not getting anything. Maybe they don't even have staff. When we commenced IXPN, there was no salary for me for months. We were just committed to doing what we believe in. So in some locations, for example, in Kano right now, where we have an exchange point and others, we are offering it for free for almost 2 years, for free. But of course, we are there for the long term. We know that eventually the community will mature, and over the years, the revenue will start to come in. Even when the revenue starts to come in, we are there to ensure that we are adding value, because the not-for-profit is not that they are not generating value, but they are not selling the value. That's the difference between a not-for-profit and a commercial. Not selling the value. You generate value, but you don't sell that value at the price of the actual value outside. So for example, we are selling capacity at the internet exchange point at maybe 1/100th of the actual cost of transit within Nigeria. So we don't sell it because we have so many customers there. So that's what we are talking about here as a community-based organization. And if you don't mind, I want to answer a question that is raised here by Brian Longway. Can I go ahead and take it, Hisham?
Maybe you hear from others on this point before we circle back to that.
Okay.
Marco, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think we always have this discussion about commercial, non-commercial internet exchange. And in the end of the day, every internet exchange is to some kind of commercial, because in the end of the day, you want to buy the switch, be sustainable, run it on the long run, and create that value for the community. And somehow it's financed. And it doesn't matter how it's financed. A successful internet exchange will ensure it. Let it be for free, and there is some kind of membership fee in general, like we see in Swiss, or you find operators donating the time to it. As long as it's sustainable, it's a successful internet exchange. But there is, it must be clear how this is done, and then it will be okay. And the other thing is, build a community, create the value. That's even more important. That's a successful exchange doesn't mean it has to have 1,000 members or 5 members or 100 members. It has to create the value and deliver the value what it's built for. These are the definition points which I'm sometimes missing.
So
thanks for that. Remco, I was going to throw to you anyways, because
perfect.
You're saying, can you elaborate more on what you mean by a free exchange?
So let's go to the second half of the sentence unused, which is there are no free exchanges, just exchanges with an intransparent cost structure. And to Mohammed's point about offering exchange for free and volunteers, at the absolute minimum, an exchange is going to use electricity, and someone's paying for it, because I mean the electricity utility is not going to waive the charges. Just there is always cost associated with running a piece of infrastructure, and whether you value your volunteers' time at 0 or not, or I mean like Mishuki, who spent endless amounts of time on this. I mean, that's out of charity and goodwill, but that is Mishuki's investment in the community. If Mishuki's employer, I mean, Mishuki, I apologize for using you as an example. agrees with him spending his time on doing this community work, then that's basically out of the pocket of his employer. So there's no such thing as free. We can talk about free, but it doesn't really, it doesn't say what it's not what it says on the tin. So you can have a free exchange, but the only way you can have a free exchange is because it's not a separate charge. It doesn't show up on your invoice, but there's always costs associated with running one.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Ilko. And I do think it's an important one to be made. So I appreciate you clarifying that a bit more. Luke wanted to address this point as well.
Oui, tout à fait. En fait,
Yes, I think that funding can be an obstacle in some countries, because if there is no sponsor, if there's no project leader that's going to take on the initial cost, then you'll never have an exchange point. And if the value that Marco is talking about, we don't have it if this is not taken on. So the initial funding is really important, and we have to thank the World Bank and African Union that have supported the development of these exchanges. And then the question to ask is how to create the added value. How, when the operators are dominating the internet exchange, how do you locally create the value? There can be up to 10, 20 gigs. So we have to find the happy medium between creating value and the domination at exchange points.
Thank you for that, Luke. I see a couple of questions that are kind of tagging on to this point. So before we go to the question with Muhammad, there's a question about cash fills and how do you cover the cost of operating something like that unless you have a backing of somebody that's willing to pay for that. And basically, what is the future model of a sustainable IXP plan? Any takers?
I would love to.
Go ahead, Remco.
I would love to. So this is actually a point that I also spoke about 6 years ago. And that is cash fill, or basically sharing costs to get access to a CDN. It's not fundamentally an IX problem, right? You're just using the IX to facilitate the last bit of actually connecting then that content to the ISPs that end up sharing the bill. And actually, I think the best way to approach it is don't consider that to be part of your IX business case at all. It is a separate business case. You're using the same platform to deliver it, but fundamentally, it's a different business case.
Yep, thanks for that. I think Michelle also wanted to. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, John. So I agree with Remco in terms of the cash flow that it definitely is a totally different business case. I actually wanted to add to the last question. So essentially, in terms of peering, yes, there is no such thing as a free in terms of exchanges. There is always costs involved, be it, like Remco said, the electricity or the capacity to get to the exchange if you're doing a remote peering connection. So there is different costs involved, and I think it's important to understand how you're going to fund the future of that IX. Like, for example, in Terrico's case, it's the co-location that drives the sustainability of the IX. Even though you don't have to be in Terrico to peer there, at the end of the day, it is the colo that drives that sustainability. So I think it's very key to understand what is going to be the future of the exchange and what model will best suit that.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other takers on the cash flow question? Marco?
Yeah. The cash flow question is, I fully agree with Remco. This is, it should, in the end of the day, not be an IX thing. I understand very well why, as an internet exchange, you want to do that and want to have the cash connected to the exchange itself. And of course, if your participants are willing to donate the cash fill, it will make sense. But there, on the other hand, it's in a lot of cases not very sustainable, because caches are growing. There will be the discussion about how to do this in future, and it's a dramatic amount of cost. We had this in India, where we had one of the OTTs connected by cash, and traditionally the founders of the exchange did pay for the cash fill, and we turned it basically off. We told the OTT, well, you can be connected to us, but we will not pay the cash fill, which ultimately ended it. They said, well, then we will disconnect. And said, well, do. Luckily enough, we had enough unique networks which they wanted to reach, and we shouldn't forget these are the biggest enterprises in the world. We, as an exchange, no matter of non-for-profit or for-profit, we are tiny in comparison to the big OTTs. So, and we are financing their network infrastructure all over the world somehow. Well, that shouldn't be the case. And just one last word, sorry for this long answer. I was in a Minok in Myanmar, where one of the OTTs said, well, there was a question when you will connect to the internet exchange with your cost, with your cash. And they said, well, the point is they're looking at the country, and if there are enough caches with the operators, they will definitely not take any cost because it's already paid. Why should they? It was a very honest answer, and this is how we should see it. Well, we are paying for the infrastructure. And in the end, the ultimate goal should be, as an IX, that we create so much value that they will want to come, to create that ecosystem around the exchange that they want to come. And this is, of course, not easy. I'm not saying this is easy for no one, no matter if you're big or small.
Fair enough. So maybe asking another question based on some of the answers and interventions that you gave. We heard things about economics of scale and how it makes things easier if you run multiple exchanges versus if you run one. We heard things about like leapfrogging, but we also heard starting small. Do any of the panelists have anything that they would like to respond to or rebuttal to in one of the issues that were brought up from any of the other panelists in these things?
Hello, yes, okay.
Mohammed, please.
Yeah, Hisham, okay. Yeah, it's absolutely important for IXPs, because whatever I say here is in the context of Africa, you know, because we have a lot of African audience here, and that's why I tend to focus on that. The reality is, yes, it's very, very important to start small and then scale it over time. For example, in Nigeria, we started with 3 exchange points within Lagos City, and we realized it wasn't sustainable. So we had to shut down the 2 IXPs and leave only 1, and then gradually over the years, you know, increase the number. So it's important, of course, to start very small and scale instead of having multi-site because of the complexities. It's important to learn from one site then before you grow it. I want to also quickly say that Ramco is correct when it comes to saying that there is no free exchange point. That is absolutely correct. I totally align with that. And of course, there is no free, but the idea is to make it as close to free as possible by the community participation, you know, by government support, by other individuals and organizations that are willing to support the exchange point, so that is running at the barest minimal cost, so that you can encourage small service providers that cannot afford to even connect to the exchange point, so that they can acquire ASN number and eventually connect, where you can now start to generate revenue out of that. And we have seen that in Nigeria.
Thanks for that, Mohammed.
So
go ahead, Anko.
I'm going to slightly, mostly agree with Mohammed, but disagree on one point. I don't think a goal of an exchange should be to be as cheap as possible. I think that what an exchange should focus on is delivering maximum value, and that's, and that might be, you might consider that to be the same thing, but I very much think it is not.
Can I address that, Isham?
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So the reality, as you know, value. What value? Some of the people that we have in Africa cannot even afford to go online. They have what is it called? The minimum wage in Nigeria is less than $100. So if we focus, if you see the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, people need to eat food first before they even look at connection. So our objective as a community-based IXP is to see how can we drive demand, because some of these people do not even know that the value of the internet, so that they can go online. The only way they can go online if it's as cheap as possible, and we have to find a way to encourage smaller service providers within communities to start evolving, so that they can showcase that if those smaller service providers and are small and are maybe community-based, they can now add value, and eventually people can now look at it. Yes, there is value in the internet, and they'll be able maybe to afford it, maybe skip lunch and pay for the connection. But I agree with you. It's important to see that there is value there, and but that value should be within a cost that is affordable to the end users in a particular.
So the immediate response to that for me is no end users are connected to an exchange. And if you look at the companies that are selling internet access in a country, and in most African countries I'm familiar with, that typically is a mobile provider, because that's how most people get on the internet. The fragment of the cost, of the total cost base of a mobile provider that they dedicate to paying for their internet access at all, or even zoom in further, for paying for their internet exchange port, is barely a rounding error. So and as much as I appreciate that you need to be cost efficient, in markets in Africa where I still see like people charging like $80 per megabit in IP transit, having an exchange run that comes to an effective price of like $8 per megabit might seem expensive from the outside, but it's actually fantastic value. And I mean, I'm gonna stop talking about this subject now, but I think I made my point.
There's room in the social gathering after this for us to continue the discussion. I know PCH, they have the whole economics of peering chat where they'd like to discuss these things. But since we're running out of time, what I would like to ask the Secretariat to show is the results of the poll that we run at the beginning, and we're going to run them again and see if the idea changed. So basically, just looking at the numbers here, more than 50%, 53% of the people that actually took the survey, and I was told that they were around 75 people. They said that the locally coordinated and run initiative is the one that they mostly voted for, and then followed by the franchise model, the large data center, and then the turnkey and government-led initiatives. Some people voted for other, and there are other examples of this. What I would like to do is, if we can run this poll again to see if the opinions changed. And I'll throw a question to the panelists while people are doing this, and we're almost like done with this session here. There was a question that I found was interesting. Somebody asked and said, to what extent does the community get a say in what model the exchange when it gets launched and run with. And I think that's an interesting one. Any takers for it?
I think if whoever takes the initiative for an exchange and they pick the wrong model, that exchange will in the end be unsuccessful. So community will vote with their feet 11 times out of 10.
Yeah, thanks for that, Marco.
If I may, yes, Isham. So it depends on the level of the maturity of the community. It's like democracy in the world. You know, developed nations, people actually know their rights, they go and vote. In the less developed countries, people connect peanuts and vote the wrong guy. So the same thing in building an exchange point. If the community is really matured and they have a voice, of course, they can dictate the way it goes. Some of the communities and industry, countries have ISP associations, and those ISP associations are extremely strong, and they can dictate the way the exchange point model is run. While for some countries that do not have any ISP association, some of them have incumbent telcos run by the government, and there is no option. Of course, the community has no option but to go with what the government says. So it all depends on the level of the maturity of the community for them to dictate the level of the exchange point. And sorry, if you don't mind, I want some 1-2 minutes to answer a question directed at me by Brian Longway.
Go ahead.
Okay. So he just asked a question here that he doesn't fully agree with me on the point of commercial IXPs that are not viable or ideal. What I'm saying is they are not viable or ideal in communities that are not developed, in virgin communities, like in smaller African countries that have very few ISPs. Most of the commercial IXPs that I mentioned earlier, even in Asia where they have 50-50, the commercial IXPs are mostly in developed nations, while have the community-based IXPs. So in Europe, for example, almost all the IXPs emerged from community-based IXPs, and gradually over time, we're now seeing shift to commercial IXPs and also to what is it called, franchise IXPs that are expanding their network. So it all depends on the location, the level of the maturity of that location. So I said it wasn't viable or ideal for a virgin location, a location that is not fully developed, especially in most of the African countries. I hope that I answered your question, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed, for that. And I'm apologizing to the panelists. I don't get to see the raise hand function. So if you had raised your hand on one of the questions, I apologize if I hadn't seen them. So maybe we can just take like closing remarks, like 1 minute per panelist. I apologize for going a bit over time here, but to try to be fair to everybody that wanted to say something. So going in alphabetical order again, Luke, we can start with you. Is Luke still around? I don't see Luke. Okay, Marco, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, this whole discussion shows is that it's very clear that there is not the ideal model. I think Luke is talking now as well. So maybe Luke, you want to continue before me?
Il peut continuer. Not maybe after him. So.
Okay.
Go ahead, Marco.
Okay, thank you. So what I was going to say is, for me, the whole discussion proves there is not the one model that fits, and not even in the same community. It really just depends that no matter what you decide for, do it in a way that you're behind it and do the best for your community. And I really like that this discussion was going into the direction of building the value, because this is what it's all about. And if the value is to make it very, very cheap for the community to get as much IP traffic exchange, which obviously is the first approach of an internet exchange, then that it is. In other more mature markets, you need to create different values. So, but find out how to create that value, how to engage your community, no matter what model is behind it. That's the outtake for me.
Thanks, Marco, for that. Luke, going back to you.
Oui, mais c'était pour le résumer, effectivement.
Yes, we find that there are many different approaches. And selecting a model depends on the specific environment, and it must be the result of a consensus so that as many players in the ecosystem or actors in the ecosystem as possible can be served satisfactorily. And it is very important to get support in kind, not just financial for funding. So through international expertise, and then you have to find the right process in order to manage the exchange effectively. And I think that IXP will have sustainable value provided they can serve the communities.
Well, thanks for that a lot, Luke. Michelle?
Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for your time today. So I think, once again, to go through my quote, it doesn't matter which model you choose, make sure it includes the community and the development of the community. So I think that kind of really puts a kind of pin in the ground. If you look at us as NAP Africa, we kind of also a mix of commercial / community, where we take a lot of information from our community. We drive a number of community initiatives in order to keep the exchange sustainable and growing. So I think in the end, once again, as per Marco said, it depends on which country you're at and which economy you live in and what regulations you face when you're building a particular model for your various regions.
Thanks for that, Michelle. Mohammed?
Yes, I align with Michelle. What she said is absolutely correct. So thank you. That's what I wanted to say, and she said it. So it's just thank you and the rest of the panelists for their time. I think we've learned so much together. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mohammed. Ramco?
Mostly just going to echo what Mohammed said. I find it very heartening to see that so many of you joined this webinar this afternoon. This clearly is a very relevant topic in the African market. I hope we can continue the conversation after this, not just at the virtual social, but in future events as well. And I hope to see you all again soon. And thanks again, ISOC, Hisham, Fergus, Mishuki for organizing this.
You took the words out of my mouth there, Ramco. Actually, we've been quite overwhelmed with the questions, with the comments, with everything that's happening. A couple of things kind of broke in the background, but what is very clear is that there are still a lot of topics and issues that we want to discuss further. And maybe we can take this to a second version of this in another panel. And we'd like to have a lot of you as panelists there and other ideas like Nurani, Farona, and others that have putting their ideas here forward. I'd like to see the results of the poll and maybe throwing it to Nish to comment on what he thinks, final thoughts plus the results of the call, is he surprised or not? Michelle?
Oh, well, I'm looking at the results now, and what's on my screen says 73% of the people that polled say that a locally coordinated run and lead initiatives are the best. And I've got to say that doesn't shock me. That doesn't shock me because it's the model that I've lived, it's the model that I've built, and it's the model that I teach people. And honestly, I think that for at least starting up in Africa, this is the model that's necessary. And I'm sorry we didn't get to do this in more engagement. There was the hand showing thing. But a lot of the problems that people are isolating here, and maybe this is a topic for a future webinar, are actually resolved if you go through the issues that happen when you get through community consensus. This idea about we've built it, how do we add value? Those really disappear if you engage the community at the start. You asked me to comment on the on the poll results. I'm ecstatic, but as I said, I'm not surprised. This, to me, is the scalable model for us to start building in Africa. And I challenge anyone that says otherwise, because tools that you think only the big fancy exchanges can run are open. INEX does an excellent job of making their tool available. Remco, one of my favorite tools is Papageno. Yes, Remco, I use it and I still talk about it. Freeware software that Asteroid put out even before I think they were called Asteroid, I don't know, but there's fantastic resources that exist. The African Exchange Point Association. So if anyone tells you you can't do this internally, they're lying to you. It's really that simple.
Thank you for that, Nish. And wrapping up the session, if I can get the sponsor slide so that I can thank the sponsors here. I'd like to thank all of you, first of all, for staying 10 minutes over. But I would also like to say a couple words to thank the sponsors that have been sponsoring this events and some of the other events that we've been running. To name a few people by name: Ben and Andrew from Facebook, Andrew, Carla and Michelle from South Africa, Petra from AM6, Darwin, Caroline from DICIX, and Walter from PAX. Thank you all, and Fergus, of course, Renee, Marcus from Flex Optics for the instant simultaneous translation. It's been quite useful for us during this series. Thank you all for attending. We will definitely have another version of this, and please let's, throwing it to Mitch for the peering bilaterals. And at that point, I finished 11 minutes late. I apologize for that, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Hisham. And just before we go to the next session, so or rather to the next peering personals session, I just want to leave on screen, Henok, if we could go back, the next event, which will be on March 2nd, I believe. The link has been shared in the chat room for registration. So next up is the virtual peering personals. So we have a couple of people who had sent in their slides. I will be allowing you to speak. So first up will be Jacob from IXPN. Henok, are you able to share the slides for the peering personals? Hello. Okay. Hello. Just hold on a second. Let me try and see if I can.
Anyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Just give me a second to put this up.
Hello.
Okay, so first is IXPN. Is that Jacob?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not really getting any audio feedback, or I can speak now. My name is Jacob from Internet Exchange Point Nigeria. It's good to be part of the virtual peering forum another time. Okay, IXPN, Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria. Our ASN is 36932. We are in Nigeria, as our name implies. We have locations in our pop locations in 8 different locations, across different parts of the country. Our goal is to cover all the regions of the nation and getting internet exchange service to all the parts of Nigeria. So we have 8 different locations across the country. Number of networks that we have connected at the moment is 67. Peak traffic that we've noticed is 210 gig. And our peering policy is open. We have members with that do bilateral peering. We have members that peer with the route server as well. We encourage different kinds of, we are open to speak. If you want to contact us, you can reach us through info@ixp.net.ng, as you have on the screen. You can also check out our websites to learn more about what we do and how we do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is West Africa Internet Exchange. Denkule.
Okay, hello everyone. This is Adekunle, the product manager for West Africa Internet Exchange. Our ASN is 37783, and we're present at MDXI Lagos. With respect to traffic, we've done a peak traffic of about 17 gig, and we're open in terms of our policy. Members do bilateral or multilateral peering. And if you'd like to contact us, peering@wafix.net. And you can also check our website for all the information.
Thank you, Adekunle. Next is AM6. I think we have Emra.
Hi, hello everyone. This is Emrah from AM6. We are based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Our ASN is 1200. We have a peak traffic of almost 10 terabit per second now, and we have almost 900 connected networks to us at our Amsterdam platform. We have an open peering policy. You can connect to AM6, our major platform in Amsterdam, directly at our 14 POPs, or you can connect to us remotely via our easy access service or via our resellers all around the world. Beside our platform in Amsterdam, we have other internet exchanges around the world. In the US, we have in Bay Area and Chicago. We have another internet exchange in Hong Kong, one in India, in Caribbean, in Bahrain. And this year we will launch 2 new IXs, one in Uzbekistan and another one in Egypt. Those two and some of others, they are covered by AM6 platforms. And I briefly tell you about our IXs service solution, which is very important I can see in Africa. So we build and maintain an internet exchange on behalf of our partner or customer. And then our customer can sell and do marketing activities together in the region. And so we have 3 models there. First one is powered by AM6. As you can see, we will launch 2 NIV, one in Uzbekistan and another one in Egypt with Telecom Egypt in Cairo. And another one fully AM6 brand, but this has to be decided together with AM6 management team. And another one is without AM6 brand. To sum it up, you can reach us with sales team at am6.net anytime. Thank you and have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you, Amra. Next up is Darwin for decades.
Hey, thanks, Mitch, and thanks again, and everybody was involved in this virtual event. It was awesome to hear a lot of insights from the experts. My name is Darren Costa, and I do represent DKIX. And like Marco mentioned before, it all started in Frankfurt with the AS 6695. We don't have our traffic levels in here, but I don't think it's necessary because we in IXP are currently the 2 exchange on the 10 terabit levels, which is very promising for the future. We have many locations, and according to the last peering personal slides that I did last year, we have added a couple of more names into it, like Greece, Barcelona, Richmond, and the newborn baby, which is in Chicago. So for more locations and new exchange points, stay tuned, and we will be happy to share more details regarding that. As an IXP, we have an open peering policy, and if we need to contact us, just reach out to sales@dkix.net, and we do have our peering DB records updated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darwin. Next up is Ben.
Hey, so good morning, good afternoon all. So Ben from Facebook, working with Andrew and Jakob, supporting our Africa Edge infrastructure, AS32934. As you can see from the slide, a number of different POPs in Africa, Alexandria in Egypt, Lagos in Nigeria, Mombasa in Kenya, and then Johannesburg and Cape Town in South Africa. We're connected to peering exchanges in all locations, almost, and all our details are in PeeringDB, and you can email us at peering@fb.com. Then we've also got AS63293, which is where we have our caches, our FNAs connected to internet exchanges. Plenty of those you can see listed on this slide. Again, all of our details are in PeeringDB for AS. If you want to reach out to us, please contact us, peering@fb.com.
Thank you, Ben. Next up is Lubix. We have Nadej. Nadej, you can speak now.
Oui, bonjour, je suis Nadej Ilunga.
Thank you. I'm Nadej Ilunga from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ah, est-ce que vous m'écoutez?
Oui.
Can you hear me?
Ok, merci. Je suis Nadej Ilunga de IXPA DRC en République démocratique du Congo.
In the RDC and head of operations for the IXP in Lubumbashi. And
le point d'échange de Lubumbashi
the Internet exchange point was launched in 2019, and it's the second largest in the RDC. And currently we have 9 members, and their peak traffic reaches 12 megabytes, and other content networks in the region can do peering with the ASN number 37785, and you can contact us at the address that you will see on the screen. Thank you very much.
Merci, Nadej. Next on is Stephanie KXP.
Hello everyone, this is Stephanie from Kenya Internet Exchange Point. We have location at Africa Data Center, is number 37704. Ikolo Nairobi is number 37770. Ikolo Mombasa is number 37786. Our peering policy is open. For contact information concerning peering or any other inquiries, you can always send us an email at bizdev@tespoc.co.k or support@tespoc.co.k, and someone will definitely get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's the last presentation we have for the peering personals. So next on is the virtual social. And basically at this point, we will invite you for the few remaining moments to use an interactive platform where you can get to meet all the participants that are present. We had hoped to have more time for this, but unfortunately, well, I think for a good reason, the session has gone well over time. So just for you to have an idea what to do, we will be posting a link in the chat room. Please use your Chrome browser or Mozilla Firefox. Doesn't work on Safari. And once you get in, for those of you who've seen this before, it's relatively straightforward.